There's nothing more quintessentially English than strawberries and cream, evening tea, and of course the original Hellraiser, a deeply dark tale of sadomasochistic demons from hell. Or so I thought. You see, the first time I saw the movie, I was not only struck by the insanely cool Cenobites, but also by the Englishness of the whole affair. Here was a first-rate horror that wasn't obviously filmed in some parts of America, but right on my own doorstep, part of which made the horror really hit home for me. So how does the original Hellraiser scream Englishness?
Would you like me to convince you?
Well, it was penned and directed by English-born Clive Barker and brought to life by English actors like Doug Bradley and Claire Higgins, with the help of some American friends of course. The horror takes place in English streets and inside English homes. There's even some shots slap bang next to the River Thames. I mean, they might as well have filmed a scene or two at Wimbledon. And on the surface, it felt like for the first time since the days of Hammer Horror, us Brits were pulling our weight with our contribution to horror again. But all's not quite what it seems. The story goes that just before the completion of the movie, New World Pictures, who provided the funding, convinced Clive Barker to relocate the story to the United States, where it would have more commercial appeal. Hey, and while you're at it, maybe tell George Lucas that Star Wars would have more commercial appeal if he set it on planet Earth. Clive was not impressed and stated later in an interview, "They, New World Cinema, got us to relocate the story to America and overdub some of the accents, which I didn't feel great about because the original story had been so English. So how the hell do you change the location of a movie pretty much after you've shot it?" Well, surprise, turns out you can't really, and other than recording the aforementioned dodgy overdubs,
I'm Brother Frank.
visually one of the only indicators we see is this guy wearing a Yankees baseball cap. But given the popularity of Yankees baseball caps, it's not really much to go on. And so even after these changes, I still just assumed, and maybe so did some of you, that Hellraiser was an English horror movie through and through. When Hellraiser 2 Hellbound came along, it did its best to straighten things up, or confuse things further, depending on your point of view. Because if you're like me, coming in believing that the first one was set in England, then you're treated to this really bizarre opening scene where US cops are poking around the house from the first movie.
Looks like someone was messed up real bad on it. Can we send it downtown?
So just what the Hellraiser's going on here? Well, like the original, New World Pictures wanted the movie set in the States, but unlike the original, that had pretty much wrapped up filming already, Hellbound started production with this intent right off the bat. So a few non-English actors enter the fray, like Q from Star Trek. Actually, it's Lieutenant Gorman from Aliens, but I swear to God, every time I watch the movie, I mistake him for John Delancey, who plays Q. Directorial duties for the movie were passed to American Tony Randall. As Clive Barker said in an interview, "For lots of reasons, the timing didn't work out for me to direct the second one. They wanted a sequel and they wanted it reasonably fast, and I was just too involved elsewhere." But the problem is, despite the first initial scene and the influx of American talent, there's not really a lot of other indicators that the film is set in the USA, and that's probably because Hellbound was 100% filmed in the UK again. Plus the floating tagline generator that is Dr. Chenard, and his English accent doesn't help matters either. The combined effect is weird as fuck because the resulting film isn't overly American, and neither does it have the English charm of the original. But hey, at least the movie provides some very unique visuals. So if Hellbound straddled the Atlantic with one boot in the stirrup of America and the other in the boot of England, like some continent-riding cowboy from hell, then Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth landed squarely in the USA and is completely unambiguous in its location. Filmed in Greensboro, North Carolina as a stand-in for New York City, Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth was the first Hellraiser movie to be filmed outside of the UK, and it really shows. Despite ironically being directed by Englishman Anthony Hickox this time, the film is unashamedly American in its presentation, complete with extra explosions, more epic set pieces, and about 20 different taglines. Besides Doug Bradley's Pinhead, we pretty much get an all-American cast, including Terry Farrell, who actually is from Star Trek this time. Whatever your opinion of Hell on Earth, there's no denying the movie certainly lacks the personality crisis of the previous two, the transatlantic transformation being pretty much complete. And let's be clear, this is in no way a dig at the series' declining quality. Without American production and investment, there would be no Hellraiser full stop. So thanks for that, chaps. And I'm 100% certain that if left alone, us Brits would have fucked the franchise up, perhaps even more spectacularly, in our own special way. So when you think about it, it's kind of a weird thing to happen, as horror franchises generally don't change their locales up that much. Yes, I can hear the comment section filling up with examples to prove me wrong, but I bet in 90% of the cases we're either talking about outer space, or somewhere that's just more disappointing than the original setting. My point is that certain characters just seem to fit certain locations really well. A great villain often goes hand in hand with his or her unique environment, but Hellraiser suffers compared to other movies in this regard, with two factors at play. The first being the actual physical filming location. Jason Voorhees is synonymous with Crystal Lake, and as we've seen with Hellraiser, the actual physical filming location greatly influences a movie's look and feel. You could film a Friday the 13th at Lake Windermere, for example, but I think you'd be losing a lot of those movies' identity in the process. And trying not to sound like an English version of Hitler or anything, but I just would have loved it if Hellraiser could have somehow held on to its initially unique English identity. The other factor is the fictional movie location. Michael Myers stalks the streets of Haddonfield, for example, which itself represents a typical smallish sized Midwestern American town. And you're hard pressed to find a Halloween movie that doesn't take place in Haddonfield in some way or other. Okay, damn you Halloween 3, you maverick rogue. Pinhead, in comparison, never gets this pairing with an in-movie location. Yes, he technically resides in a hell dimension, but the nature of the lament configuration means that he can pop up basically anywhere. And whilst you could argue that this has a unique advantage in terms of storytelling potential, that potential just hasn't been realised yet. And I personally feel that it's actually a detriment to the character. For me at least, Pinhead never really feels more at home than when he's lurking in a West London attic. Every horror villain needs a home, a place where they can go, you know, hang out, maybe kiss scary Brandon goodnight, or just piss around playing Xbox all day. I mean, imagine how shit it'd be if Freddy Krueger went to India.